David here with Figboot on Pens, back again with another stay-at-home ink review. What I have for you today is a very cool ink from a company which might be new to you. The name of the company is Kiwi Inks, and while I'll be showing you a number of their color offerings today, the main one I'll be going over is called TreColori. Kiwi Inks is based out of Los Angeles, California, and is run by a gentleman by the name of Kiwi Huang, who is currently studying at UC Irvine, home of the infamous fighting anteaters. I am always intrigued by emerging companies in the fountain pen ink, as well as pen space, so I reached out to Kiwi and he was nice enough to provide me with some inks to review. In order to get a closer look at these new and unique offerings, please join me over here at camera 2. So this is the ink we're going to be taking a look at today, Kiwi Ink TreColori. They come in these nice glass bottles. I do like that the ink is actually displayed here and shown on the label. It would be nice to have the name, so if you have colors that are fairly similar, you'd be able to tell the names apart, but it is nice that it's on here with a little bit of a heavier application and a lighter application, so you can see what you have going on here. In regard to what the ink actually looks like, here it is. This is Kiwi Ink TreColori. It's a nice kind of bluish green with a red sheen and some silverish shimmer to it. Can you see some of the shimmer down here? I've shaken this up recently so you can't see much of it in there, but it's in there. It's one of those heavy sheening inks, not quite as much in regard to some comparisons as the Organic Studio Walden Pond. It's close to there, but it's not quite as much. Here it is with diamine smoke on the water. And then in regard to some greens, this is the Robert Oster River of Fire and the Lamy Petrol. Here it is with Colorverse Extra Dimension. That was fairly similar. And here it is with a couple of other greens that are heavy shading as well, or sheening, as the Sailor Yamidori, as well as the Ackerman Blau Groen. Now, Kiwi Ink has a number of different inks in their lineup. And some of the other ones, they have, this one is a Kiwi Ink TreColori Purple. Then they have Kiwi Ink Clear Skies. This one's a little light for my taste. There is a Mermaid Black. There is a Fairy Dust. And then probably one of the better named inks I've seen recently is Nebula Space Kitty. One of the cool things that Kiwi Inks can do for you is they can create custom colors to your specifications with whatever sheen, whatever shade, and whatever shimmer you would like. So I actually had them create 3 for me based on some of my 3 favorite sports teams. I have the Padre, now I named these myself, which is a brown with a gold shimmer to it. Then we have the Lakers, which is a purple with a gold shimmer to it. And then also I have the Aztec for the San Diego State Aztecs. It's a little hard to see here, but this is a nice blue, red with a black shimmer to it. But it's really nice that you can kind of create any color you want to in the spectrum, and Kiwi Ink makes all of their inks by hand and can accommodate that for you. Okay, let's get a closer look at this TreColori. This is what it looks like on some Tomoe River paper. You can see here that with the heavier application that I applied here, it is a very sheening ink, very heavy on the sheen. And then just so you can see it, in regard to the 3 custom colors I made, this was the Aztec, this was the Padre, and that is the Lakers. Just for fun, I applied a lot of this ink on some Tomoe River paper, and you could really see. Now, the paper started to warp a little bit because of the amount that I put on here, but you can just see the abundance of color and shade and sheen and shimmer that is found in this ink. It's pretty amazing. So we have here Kiwi Ink TreColori. This is Rhodia 80-gram paper, And I would say here that the ghosting and bleed on this, even though it's a very saturated ink, is fairly low. I'd say the shade is low, and what I mean by that is that it's a fairly saturated ink, so you're not going to get a lot of shading when you write. And it is a very high sheen ink. I wrote the top here in this 2.4 millimeter Pilot Parallel. And then in regard to the pens that I'm going to be taking a look at today, the very first one is this Monty Winfield High Water, which I reviewed previously, which is a really nice pen that has some carbon fiber as well as micarta. So we have the Monty Winfield. That's the High Water. And this is a fine steel nib. Then next up, we have a pen that is one of my favorites, but has been discontinued and is very hard to find right now. And this is the Pilot Stella 90S. Or as it was known in the US, the Stargazer, which is one of the best little pens I own. It's one of the, I really like the size, and that the gold nib on this pen is outstanding. And so it was always a really good entry-level gold nib pen if you could find one of these. But this is the Pilot Stella 90S. Or the Stargazer. And this is a medium 14 karat gold nib. And then finally, another Pilot pen that we have here, which is the Custom 743. And this one, as you see by the sticker that I kind of like to leave on these Pilot pens, is a FA nib. So we have the Pilot, and this is the Custom 743, and that's with the FA nib. And I haven't reviewed this pen before, but I just want to give you a little closer look at that FA nib. And it's a pretty cool pen, and it's even good for everyday writing. It just gives an extra amount of flair to your writing. So if you've seen any of my ink reviews, you know that I have a tendency to talk about films. Kiwi Inks is based out of Los Angeles. I usually kind of tie it into something in regard to the location of where the ink was made, but I'm not going to be able to go over the best film or my favorite film made in Los Angeles. So I decided to stretch the grounds of this a little bit, and since this is named Kiwi Ink, I decided to talk about one of my favorite films from New Zealand, even though this ink has nothing to do with New Zealand. And one of my favorite films from New Zealand is from the director Taika Waititi, and it's called What We Do in the Shadows. It is an incredible mockumentary that follows the lives of a number of vampires around New York, and it is incredibly hilarious and has even led to a very funny television show as well by the same name. So, in regard to the Monty Williams, I said What We Do in the Shadows is a fantastic modern example of the mockumentary. There are some outstanding mockumentaries out there. Things like This Is Spinal Tap. There is the 3 Christopher Guest films, the Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, and A Mighty Wind. Things like Borat, or even something a little off the charts is a very funny film called Man Bites Dog. Now that one's a little more on the dark humor side. It's not for everyone, but if you have a chance to see it, it is something I would recommend. Now, in regard to the Pilot Stella 90S, Taika Waititi was one of the creative team behind What We Do in the Shadows, along with Jermaine Clement and several others, but he's gone on to write and direct incredible films such as Hunt for the Wilder People and Jojo Rabbit. For Jojo Rabbit, he actually won an Oscar for adapted screenplay. Also, in some recent news, he's been pegged to direct another film in the Star Wars universe. And then finally, with the Pilot 743, What We Do in the Shadows, the abbreviation for that, has many memorable scenes and quotable lines. Mainly, my favorite is when the vampires come across some werewolves, and one of the werewolves happens to curse, and the leader of the werewolves chastises him and says, "We are werewolves, not swearwolves." I know that's silly, but it's just made me laugh when I heard it. And lately, the name of my fantasy football teams have always been the Swearwolves. So I keep that tradition alive over the last few years. I would say that the flow on this is medium-high. You can, when you are making custom inks, request whether or not you want to have a low-flowing ink or a very dry ink or a very wet ink or something that's medium. That's something you could also specify. In regard to drying time, for the fine nib, it actually dried pretty quickly. In 10 seconds, it was quick and dry. And for medium, after 15 seconds, you were good to go. I said here that Kiwi ink offers nice creative color options and has the ability to customize ink to your personal specifications. The bottles retail from $17 to $18. You know what? Actually, this is more like $14 to $23. There's a little bit of a wider range in there, depending on the options you choose. This TreColoring is a little on the higher side, and then there's a number of basic or more basic colors, which is around the $14, $15 range. Now, in regard to some waterproof testing, let's go ahead and drip some water on here. And while that sits for a second, let's take a look at the chromatography. You can see how this ink separates out into some reds and then some yellows and some greens and blues. There's a lot of different shades going on in this mix. And then this is what it looks like. I always think it's interesting how you can see that the shimmer gets left behind when you're doing these this chromatography. But I just like the different shades in here. It's a nice little makeup. And in regard to being waterproof, it doesn't profess that this is a waterproof ink, and it certainly isn't. But that doesn't take away from the cool looks and the great features of this particular ink. So there we have the Kiwi ink TreColori. Kiwi inks is something that's a very interesting lineup, and that's something that I would strongly recommend you guys take a look at. So until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.